What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to be discussing even more new changes in iOS 18.4 and iOS 18.5 beta. We're going to talk about the latest on how tariffs might affect Apple and the prices, fresh iOS 19 leaks, a surprise product that might drop this year, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And as always, if you want to continue staying up to date with everything going on in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, and also check out the Apple Den Discord server to continue the conversation. Okay, so just as we predicted in last week's episode of Apple Weekly, this week was very boring with no software update. So as of now, the latest public software release is iOS 18.4, and the latest beta is iOS 18.5 Beta 1, but both of those might be changed come next week. And we'll talk more about that here in a little bit. But I do want to just start off by talking about iOS 18.4, since a lot of you guys are probably still running iOS 18.4 at this point, since there's not a lot new in iOS 18.5 Beta 1. But so far, over the past couple of weeks, I've seen really no issues with iOS 18.4 that are very widespread, which is great. However, there have been some issues I've seen a lot of people reporting with the podcast application. So if you have issues with podcasts, let me know in a comment down below. Some people are just seeing a completely blank screen and podcast not playing, and sometimes the podcast widget would be blank as well, like they wouldn't be able to see anything on their widgets right here. And there's also still an issue with the voice memos application, where if you edit a voice memo, if you try kind of trim it up a little bit and then you go to play it, you're not able to. The buttons don't work after editing a voice memo. So both of those bugs are still here in iOS 18.4, which is part of the reason why we might be seeing an iOS 18.4.1 as early as next week, because Mac Rumors posted this week, showing that they see, users in their analytics running iOS 18.4.1, which typically means that software update is coming within the next week or so. Now, this is going to be a double point update, 18.4.1, so it's most likely going to be just software, bug fixes, and of course, security patches. Don't expect any new features or changes in that, but we could be seeing that as early as next week. Now, as far as iOS 18.5 Beta 1 goes, that's what I'm currently running right here on my iPhone 16 Pro Max, my secondary device. But there's actually one change that I was not able to show you guys in my initial 18.5 Beta 1 What's New video, but for some reason it just started working this week. And that is inside of the Settings, General, Apple Care, and Warranty. And if you go into here, this page has been slightly tweaked. So we have this big logo up top that looks much cleaner and much more modern than it did on iOS 18.4. You can see the comparison here side by side. And then if we go into one of our devices, so let's just go into this device right here, this section has also been changed, and it looks a lot better here on 18.5 compared to 18.4. And you will also notice the learn more about my benefits right there. So the wording has changed a little bit, and then when you go ahead and tap on that, it shows you this limited warranty screen. So for some reason, like I said, that was not showing when the 18.5 beta first came out for me and for a lot of other people, but for some reason it just started working earlier this week. Now, unfortunately, we did not see any new Apple Intelligence features in iOS 18.5 like we were originally expecting after they got delayed from iOS 18.4. However, we might actually be seeing those personal contacts, those upgraded Siri features with Apple Intelligence sooner than we thought, at least according to the New York Times, because they said that Apple plans to release the delayed Apple Intelligence Siri features this fall, not next year like a lot of us originally expected. Because if you remember, last month, Apple said that they would be rolling out the more personalized Siri, quote, in the coming year. And a lot of us didn't really know what to make of in the coming year. Basically, it sounded like next year we'll see those Apple Intelligence features. And then Reuters followed that up with a report saying that yes, these Apple Intelligence features are coming in 2026. But now, just late this week, the New York Times said this: Apple hasn't canceled its revamped Siri. The company plans to release a virtual assistant in the fall, capable of doing things like editing and sending a photo to a friend on request. So based on what the New York Times is saying here, which obviously that's a very reputable source and they talk to people close to the matter, it seems like this new Siri is going to be in iOS 19.0, which means that we should see it in the beta testing phase of iOS 19, which would be great because, again, a lot of us, including Reuters, the report, claimed that it was coming next year, which would put that at like iOS 19.4-ish, 19.3, 19.4. But now it looks like we're going to see it in iOS 19.0, which is a great sign. I mean, it's delayed. It's still kind of unacceptable, but at least we're getting it sooner than we thought. Also this week, we saw a pretty massive update to the WhatsApp application with a lot of new features and changes. And WhatsApp published the changes here on their blog. So you can see that the online indicator now shows in group chats. You can now highlight notifications in groups. You have events updates, tappable reactions, document scanning on iPhone, default app for iPhone, so you can now set that as a default messaging app, and same with the phone calls. You have pinch to zoom in video calls, add to call from a chat, smoother video calls, and you can see some of these updates here as well for video notes, voice message, and QR codes. So once again, if you are a WhatsApp user, you will definitely want to go ahead and update to this latest version to take advantage of all those new features and changes. I know a lot of my non-US folks like to use WhatsApp, so that's a good update. But an application that I think everybody likes no matter where they live is ChatGPT. And ChatGPT got a pretty substantial upgrade, kind of a behind the scenes. You wouldn't really know it. You know, there is kind of a pop-up here, but Sam Altman did post this on X talking about a pretty big change to ChatGPT. So he says this: "We have greatly improved memory in ChatGPT. It can now reference all your past conversations. This is a surprisingly great feature, and it points at something we are excited about, which is AI systems that get to know you over your life and become extremely useful and personalized." And this rolled out earlier this week for Pro users, and it will be out soon for Plus users, except for those in these countries. Now, obviously you can opt out of this if you find that kind of creepy and you don't want all your information to be stored and kind of saved to learn off of you. Of course, you can opt out of that, but I think that is pretty neat if that's something you're into. Also this week, we saw a new feature being tested for Instagram where you have to put in a secret code before you can view the Instagram reel, which is pretty interesting. Not too sure on the use case for that, but that is something that is being currently tested by Instagram. We also got a new application from Apple this week called Apple Immersive Video Utility, which of course is for, Mac OS, that allows you to import, organize, package, and review Apple Immersive Video media on your Mac. So it says, combined with Apple Immersive Video Utility for Vision OS, you can connect and review Apple Immersive Video on Apple Vision Pro. Now take a look at my screen. This looks like a typical iPhone home screen, right? Well, this might actually be changing come iOS 19, at least according to a new leak from John Prosser over at FPT, who supposedly has his hands on an early build of iOS 19. So here is what that could look like. Now, of course, take everything with a grain of salt. We don't know if any of this is going to actually be how iOS 19 looks in the end once we actually get it, in June at WWDC. But this could potentially be a look at what we see with iOS 19 with these more rounded icons, and you can just kind of see that more Vision OS kind of glossy, glassy style that we've been hearing rumored for years now. It might actually be happening. And what I find interesting is the pill-shaped tab bar at the bottom of most of the built-in applications like Apple Music, Messages, Phone, and things like that. So this kind of reminds me of like the Apple TV. So it's kind of an element of Apple TV kind of mixed with Vision OS. So it actually works really well. It looks really good on the iPhone. It's kind of something you'd expect to see on the iPad, but it does look good on the iPhone. You can see some of the other elements right here as well, like in the Messages application. So what are your thoughts on this potential first look at iOS 19? Now, of course, Mark Gurman did come back and kind of retweet his old tweet talking about how this is an old build and it's not really representative of what we're going to see at WWDC, but I did still want to share it just in case, it is actually going to be what we see at that point, because at this point, really, who knows? But what are your thoughts on this? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, speaking of that Vision OS style design, we're also hearing that watchOS might be getting a similar makeover, at least according to the verifier. So they're saying that watchOS will eventually, so maybe not in the next version of watchOS, but eventually it's going to have elements of Vision OS in the software, including a look that is bolder, slightly transparent, and with a floating aesthetic. Anyways, going back to iOS 18.4 and iOS 18.5, there's really not a lot to talk about with the performance and the battery life here, so I'm not going to spend too long talking about this before talking about what to expect next from Apple, but I did just want to mention that iOS 18.5 and iOS 18.4, I should clarify here, 18.5 beta 1 at the point of recording this, but both software versions are running pretty much identical. It's pretty crazy that iOS 18.5 beta 1 is running pretty much the same as iOS 18.4. Of course, there are going to be other bugs and things like that, but so far the performance is great. I've really had no hiccups at all on my main device using 18.5 or my secondary device, which is a good sign. And again, same goes with iOS 18.4. But if you're having any issues aside from just bugs like in the podcast application and in voice memos, if you're having any performance type issues, let me know in a comment down below, because I'm really not seeing a ton of those. And same goes with battery life. Battery life has been tremendous, honestly, on iOS 18.4, and 18.5 beta 1 is okay. It's not quite as good as 18.4, but I've been impressed with the battery life lately, just in general from these iOS versions. So again, if you're having any issues, let me know in a comment down below, because even the battery life issues are not very widespread. Now, as far as what to expect next from Apple, next up is going to be the week of April 14th. Now, I would expect to see iOS 18.5 beta 2 come next week. That's what I originally predicted when we saw the first beta of iOS 18.5. So I am expecting to see iOS 18.5 beta 2 next week, either on Monday or Tuesday, most likely. Now, we should also be expecting to see iOS 18.4.1. So we could also see that on Monday or Tuesday, or really anytime next week as late as Friday. Apple can release those double point updates really at any day. So I would expect both of those versions to be coming out next week. Again, neither one of them are likely going to have anything too major in it, but it will still be exciting after a drought this week and when it comes to software. All right, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news, and let's start with tariffs. I know everybody's been talking about it for the past couple of weeks, but I do need to mention the latest on the tariffs and how it could be impacting Apple products moving forward, and more specifically, the prices of Apple products. So according to the Wall Street Journal, Apple is going to be importing more iPhones into the US from India to lessen the impact from the tariffs that Trump put into place earlier this month. Now, in India, the tariffs are set at 26% compared to 104% on goods from China, or even higher at the time of recording this. It's always fluctuating with that percentage. So Apple is going to be saving a lot of money basically by going through India for these parts instead of China. And just on Wednesday, we heard that Apple urgently requested suppliers to ship as many premium devices as possible to the United States by air, especially those priced above $3,000. And this was also in response to the tariffs, which is very interesting. And it does look like Trump believes that Apple could manufacture iPhones in the US, and he thinks that building iPhones in China is, quote, unsustainable. However, he did say that some countries could be exempt from tariffs. So we're really hoping and praying that Apple is going to be exempt from these tariffs eventually, but as of right now, he has not said exactly who is going to be exempt. But as I said last week, and this has nothing to do with politics, some people got really upset last week because they thought I was like a MAGA supporter just because I said not to freak out over the headlines. This has nothing to do with politics. I am just completely in the middle. I'm not on either side. So I'm just saying that don't fall for these shock value headlines. Like, Apple is not going to price an iPhone at $7,000 in the next 3 years. Like, it's just simply not going to happen. Now, will costs potentially increase for Apple? Sure, they could if they don't get exempt, which they're most likely going to get exempt. But even if their costs did increase, it's not going to be pushed onto the consumer as heavily as a lot of these people are making it seem. These, sensationalist headlines make it seem. So all I'm saying is don't panic. Don't rush to get your iPhone, just because you think the price is going to triple in the next year or so. It's just not going to happen, in my opinion. Again, we might see a small increase, but again, it's a very good likelihood that Apple is just going to be completely exempt and everything's just going to go back to normal. So we'll wait and see. Just let everything kind of settle, since it's all still so brand new. We're still all trying to figure out what's going on here with these tariffs as well. Now, we talked about premium products costing over $3,000 being shipped to the US in a hurry. Well, one of those products, maybe not this exact product, but we're now hearing that a Vision Pro 2 might actually be coming this year. This is crazy. This came out of nowhere because we were not expecting a new Vision Pro in 2025. We really haven't heard much about that lately, but this is news, and this comes from IT Home, and they said that the key components for the next Vision Pro have entered mass production, and this includes panels, housing, and circuitry, and that the Vision Pro 2 is expected at the end of 2025. So I would take this with a small grain of salt because we've not really heard anybody talk about Vision Pro 2 anytime recently. Now, we did hear Gurman say that the Apple Vision Pro 2 could come as early as, late 2025, so he did actually say as early as. So it is possible, I guess, but we're really waiting to hear about more, of these rumors and more kind of leaked parts and things like that before we get our hopes up. I know all 12 of you guys getting your hopes up for a Vision Pro 2, but I guess obviously the main thing we're wondering about, the main concern a lot of people have, is going to be the weight and of course the price. So stay tuned on that, but it could actually be coming this year, which would be a big surprise. But one thing we know for sure is coming later this year is the iPhone 17 Pro, and we now have new leaked cases that show a huge cutout for the new camera bump. So it looks like this camera bump is actually happening. We've seen this leaked so many times over the months, and now we're seeing even more cases. Sonny Dixon posted this, and you can see these cases for the 17 Pro. That camera hole is absolutely massive. And you might remember some of the rumors about the iPhone 17 Pro. We're talking about a two-toned back, how it might be two different colors or maybe two different materials on the back to look really different. Well, according to Mark Gurman, that is not happening. We're not going to have a two-toned back on the 17 Pro or Pro Max. Now, speaking of Mark Gurman, we also saw a new report from him this week talking about the Apple Smart Home Hub and how it might actually be delayed until 2026. Surprise, surprise. It's the year of delays for Apple. I guess last year was too. Gurman said this: Apple's Smart Home Hub timing is up in the air after recent Siri delays. It was supposed to be on sale by now, but the major engineering hiccups related to the revamped Siri voice assistant ended up delaying the product since. The device will be primarily controlled by voice, and it depends on Siri and the underlying app intents technology. Now Apple is considering a delay until 2026 when the Siri features are expected to land. So obviously Gurman wrote this before the New York Times came out and said that these features are actually coming in 2025, not 2026. So could that mean that we're still going to see the Smart Hub this year? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but we kind of have conflicting reports here in terms of the timing for, the app intents and the new Siri that's coming. But looking ahead to the year after next in 2027, I know it sounds crazy, but we're expecting a pretty big redesign for Apple's 20-year anniversary. So Gurman says that Apple is preparing a major shakeup for the iPhone's 20-year anniversary in 2027, including a foldable version and a bold new Pro model that makes more extensive use of glass. And then finally, just as tradition, we have another crazy AirTag story. So this time, a man in California is suing the Mountain View Police Department after they arrested him thanks to an AirTag. You see, back in 2023, Mountain View police were investigating a theft from a local storage facility where the victim told police that there was an AirTag hidden inside of one of the stolen bags. So the police were able to trace the signal straight to another storage unit, this one belonging to a guy named Ty. That's where police say they found the stolen property, and Ty was arrested on the spot. But now, 1 year later, Ty has decided to file a federal lawsuit claiming that his arrest was illegal. Because according to Ty's lawsuit, police never had a warrant to search his storage unit, and that the police worked together with an employee at the facility who let them in without proper authority. In his words, they violated his Fourth Amendment rights by tracking him and entering the space using what he called unauthorized and unwarranted search methods. As of now, the city of Mountain View has not said much, but we'll see how the courts handle this one. So that's unique and kind of crazy. And I have to ask you guys a question here. Like, do you think that the police are going to win this, or do you think that Ty is going to win this? Do you think that the police had the right to search his belongings because the AirTag showed the signal coming from in there, or not? Anyways, guys, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Also leave a comment down below with your thoughts. Also, I did want to address some kind of comments I got in last week's episode because maybe I didn't say what I was trying to say as clearly. This is in regards to Amazon buying TikTok. In last week's video, I said it'd be great for Amazon if they bought TikTok, which I see as their biggest competitor. Now, I did not suggest that it's great for consumers. I did not suggest that I'm a fan of this happening. I just simply said it'd be great for Amazon as a business. But some people took that personal and thought I was against consumers for some reason. Not at all the case. I was not talking from a consumer standpoint, strictly just from a business objective standpoint is all I was saying. Obviously, for us, that would be bad because I don't like, big monopolies getting, crazier and just eating everybody up. So I'm not a fan of Amazon doing it. I don't think it's going to happen anyways. I just simply do not think Amazon's going to buy TikTok anyways. But if they did, I was just saying that that would be an acquisition for them. But of course, for us consumers, that would not be a win. And I didn't suggest that it was a good thing for us either. But some people kind of got that misconstrued. Maybe I should have worded it better last week, but I wanted to follow up here and let you guys know what I meant. Anyways, that's enough rambling. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time.